Fairy tales and monsters can take shape in ways you wouldn't expect. Stories like The Three Little Pigs are known for their iconic villain, the Big Bad Wolf, but there are many others. Some are giants who live atop gigantic beanstalks. Some are witches who live in a house made of sweets. Some have an unrelenting appetite for flesh. Monsters wear many faces and have changed and evolved from the beginning of storytelling to this very day. It has come an increasingly common view in many modern films today that in order for a villain to have depth, they need to be misunderstood or misguided. Some have good intentions, but bad methods. According to some, the only great villain is a villain audiences can sympathize with. Fairy tale monsters, however, deserve no sympathy. That is not their purpose. They're a child's first antagonist, their first idea for what a villain is, for what evil is. Ultimately, their purpose is to teach the child a lesson or a moral. There is good and there is evil. But as that child grows, so too does their complexity. They learn that there are many hues to black and white, and so eventually, children outgrow their fairy tales. What if the fairy tale grew older as well? What if the monster grew into its claws and fangs? What if you looked at what was once black and white and saw depth in the darkness? In 2006, Pan's Labyrinth, a film directed by Guillermo del Toro, released to critical and commercial acclaim. Described by Roger Ebert as a fairy tale for adults, the story, characters, cinematography, acting, and soundtrack were all highly regarded to audiences around the world. To many, and to me, this film was just special. One standout to audiences was the fantastic creature design of the film's many monsters, including the Faun and the Pale Man, all masterfully performed by Doug Jones. The Faun has this ethereal, otherworldly beauty to him, but there's also something devilish and sinister to him as well. The Pale Man is... look at him. This guy is the stuff of nightmares. Truly grotesque, a monster through and through. And the frog is, well, he's a frog. There is one monster, however, that is often overlooked, overshadowed by the haunting silhouette and fantastical design of the Faun and the Pale Man. But on a closer look, this monster is easily more vile, more vicious, and more evil than anything else seen in this film. This monster is the Big Bad Wolf. This monster is a man named Captain Ernesto Vidal. Spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen this film, because I will be going very in depth with its story, characters, and its ending. If you haven't watched this film, please click off of this video and do so. It really is worth your time. Everyone here? Good. So, just as a refresher for those who haven't seen this film in a while, Pan's Labyrinth is a dark fairy tale / war movie set in the aftermath of the Spanish Civil War. The story follows Ophelia, a young, imaginative girl faced with the harsh reality of a country and a family ripped apart. After her father's death, her mother, Carmen, remarries a military captain under Francisco Franco's fascist regime. Ophelia and her mother, now in late pregnancy, travel to the captain's outpost at an old mill, where he's been ordered to eliminate rebels hiding in the surrounding woods. Ophelia encounters many mythical creatures and monsters at the mill, especially in the nearby labyrinth where she meets a faun, who tells her that she's a reincarnated princess of the underworld, Moana. No, not that Moana, but still a princess. And what young girl who believes in fairy tales doesn't want to be a princess? Well, to claim her birthright, she must complete 3 tasks. first task pits her against a giant, greedy frog. The second task is even more dangerous, as she evades the parent grasp of the pale man. Her final task, the most dangerous yet, requires she stand against her new stepfather, the fascist Captain Vidal himself. So what makes Vidal so dangerous? Why does he stand out amongst all these fairy tale monsters? Well, because in many ways, he is one. Evil seldom takes shape immediately. It is often little more than a whisper at first, a glance, a betrayal. But then it grows and takes root, still invisible, unnoticed. Only fairy tales give evil a proper shape. The big bad wolves, the evil kings, the demons, and devils. Ophelia knew that the man she would soon have to call father was evil. He had the smile of the Cyclops Ojonkanu, and the cruelty of the monsters Kuegle and Nubaru nesting in his eyes. Creatures she had met in her fairy tale books. But her mother didn't see his true shape. People often grow blind when they grow older, and maybe Carmen Cardoso didn't notice the wolfish smile because Captain Vidal was handsome and always impeccably dressed in his gala uniform, boots, and gloves. Because she wished so badly for protection. Maybe her mother mistook his bloodlust for power, and his brutality for strength.
Lástima.
In this introduction alone, there are 2 references to the Big Bad Wolf, and throughout the rest of the official novelization, it wouldn't be the last. For the entire novel, when the narrative is being told through Ophelia's POV, she exclusively refers to him using one title, the Wolf. But why? What about Vidal does Ophelia associate with the Big Bad Wolf? Well, it's no secret that when it comes to fairy tale villains, the wolf is a staple. Of course, there's the 3 Little Pigs and Little Red Riding Hood by the Brothers Grimm. However, there is also 2 lesser-known stories also written by the Brothers Grimm that feature the wolf as its main antagonist, The Wolf and the Fox, and The Wolf and the 7 Young Goats. Though different stories, the wolf's character remains consistent across them all. In each story, he is predatory, deceptive, and no stranger to violence and death itself. His own death, or others. His own downfall often comes due to his overconfidence and underestimating his victims. He preys upon pigs and goats alike, showing no mercy to those he considers beneath him. He is a master of deception, disguising himself as a trustworthy family member or authority figure. A wolf in sheep's clothing, willing to do whatever it takes to get what he wants. And then there's his appetite. Death surrounds him, and violence excites him. He literally feeds off of it. Despite this, the fox outsmarts him, and he is shot by the farmer they stole from. The 3rd Little Pig outsmarts him as well, with his house made of bricks, and his lead fireplace. The mother of the goat slices his belly open, frees her children from within, and stuffs him full of rocks, resulting in him drowning in the river. The brave woodsman does something similar, rescuing Red Riding Hood and her grandmother from the wolf by chopping him open with his axe. Vidal's character is nearly a perfect match to that of the wolf, but even worse. The fact that he is a living, breathing human in a position of power, and an appetite for blood, pain, and control, is nothing short of horrifying. Our first clue to his savage nature in the film is when he is confronted by 2 hunters in the night. The father and the son claim to be hunting rabbits for their sick, hungry family, but the skeptical Vidal is unsure. They may be providing for the rebels in the woods, or be rebels themselves. While questioning the father, the son keeps speaking out of turn, disrespectfully speaking up for his father, while ignoring the captain's orders to stay silent. Once Vidal has lost his patience, he responds without remorse.
Me lo ha matado. Me lo ha matado. Asesino. Hijo de puta.
Utterly emotionless. Even after finding the rabbits, his response is annoyance and impatience. He killed these men in cold blood and felt nothing. This is not a one-off. Throughout the film, Vidal remains bloodthirsty and cruel. He kills, tortures, and neglects, and excels while doing so. He is pure evil. Pure evil masked by maintaining an appearance of reverence and authority. While he tries to maintain that mask to hide the wolf inside, that mask also hides his parallels to the other monsters in this story as well. Take for instance the Pale Man. This monster preys on children, luring them in with a table full of delicious food. Vidal also uses this tactic, collecting and hoarding food for all the nearby villages and locking it away in the mill, supplying families only one single ration card. This limits the aid villagers can supply the rebels in the woods, and lures them out of hiding. Both monsters, the master of their domain, sitting at the head of a table before a fireplace. And even the giant frog, who has taken to the underground tunnels under the film's iconic fig tree. Ophelia is told the frog is greedily robbing the tree of its resources and preventing the tree from thriving. This of course parallels Vidal robbing the villagers of their food and preventing these families from thriving. The fig tree, pictured many times in the film's marketing, closely and intentionally resembles female anatomy. Ophelia's mother, pregnant with Vidal's child, is very sick and suffering complications. At first, Ophelia blames her unborn brother for her mother's failing health, but can't help to eventually feel sympathy for the boy, realizing he didn't ask to be born, let alone born this way. Ultimately, she blames Vidal for robbing her mother of her health and vitality. And while Ophelia was able to save the tree, she was unable to save her mother. And did Vidal care? Was he heartbroken that his newlywed wife, the mother of his child, died in pain and agony to deliver that child? No, not even a little. Vidal never cared about Carmen. His only love, his only obsession, was for his son.
Escúcheme bien. Si tiene que escoger, salve al niño. Ese niño llevará mi nombre y el nombre de mi padre. Sálvelo a él.
Or, more accurately, his obsession with death. His father was a hero. Vidal had grown up with that thought. He had built himself around it, a true man, and that thought had brought a memory, almost invariably, of the day when he and his father had visited the rocks of Villanueva. The rugged seascape on the horizon, the jagged rocks beneath, 100-foot drop. His father had gently guided him to the edge, and then held him fast. He had grabbed his son when he recoiled, forcing him to look down into the abyss. Feel that fear? His father asked. You must never forget it. That is what you must feel every time you grow weak. Vidal resides in his quarters near the water wheel of the mill. The turning wheel may even resemble turning clockwork. He lives there, sleeps there, shaves there. He even keeps his most prized possession here, his father's pocket watch. He is often seen cleaning it, tuning it, taking great care to observe and preserve it, even though it already appears broken. Its glass is cracked, but he neglects to replace it. He studies it longingly through its cracked surface, time ticking away.
¿Le he dicho ya que conocí a su padre, capitán?
No, no tenía idea.
Le conocí brevemente, pero causó en mí una vivísima impresión.
Un gran militar.
Los hombres de la tropa decían que cuando el general Vidal murió en el campo de batalla, estrelló su reloj contra el suelo para que constara la hora exacta de su muerte. Para que su hijo supiera cómo muere un valiente.
Habladurías. Nunca tuvo un reloj.
He never owned a watch. Of course, this is a lie. But why lie? What does he gain by refusing to admit he holds on to his father's keepsake? Let's look one more time at Vidal in the wheelhouse. And there it is. Vidal is obsessed with not just death in general, but his own death. His father died smashing his pocket watch at the time of his death. This moment would shape Vidal's entire life. From then on, he would know how a man dies, how a man's death affects the lives of those around him, the impact it leaves, the legacy. He desperately wanted that for himself. It is his most vulnerable, intimate desire.
Venga, Serrano, sin miedo. Que esta es la única forma decente de morir.
Maybe death was the only love in Vidal's heart. His greatest romance. Nothing compared to it. So grand, so absolute. A celebration of darkness, of finally giving in completely. Even in death, though, there was of course the fear of failing, of fading away, unnoticed, and without glory. Death is Vidal's one true desire, and it shames him. It makes him feel weak. Perhaps this is the pivotal reason why he holds firm to his deception. No one can think of him as weak. He refuses to admit his vulnerabilities. He obviously has a complex relationship with his father, and would rather deny that history, that piece of his heart, than risk anyone seeing the slightest chink in his armor. So the man has problems. Deep psychological trauma. It is clear that Vidal was indoctrinated at a young age into being a cold-hearted soldier, just like his father. The father who nearly shoved him off a cliff, who taught him death in combat is the only decent way to die, who taught him that time is always ticking away. He raised his son to be just as abhorrent as he was. And instead of, therapy, his solution is to continue the pattern of generational trauma. The answer to Vidal's issues would be a son, a way to conquer death. His son was nothing more than a means to an end. His toxic ideals and vicious nature will bleed into its parenting, as it already has with Ophelia. There is a word for this behavior, a word no child should be associated with, but far too many are. And that word is abuse. In 1988, a Mexican anthology series called La Hora Marcada began to air. Although the series is largely unknown to the rest of the world, it gained popularity and critical success within the region. Though the series ended in 1990, loyal fan base still persists to this day, comparing its memorable horror and science fiction storylines to a quote-unquote Mexican Twilight Zone. The series served as a debut for many Mexican up-and-coming directors, one of those directors being Guillermo del Toro himself. In 1990, del Toro wrote an episode called De Ogros. This story follows a 6-year-old girl with a terrible home life. Her father is alcoholic, neglectful, and abusive. The father needs money and refuses to tell the daughter what the money is needed for. He instructs her to sell something valuable and bring the money back to him, not to tell her mother. And then he presents her a pocket watch. On the girl's way to sell the pocket watch, she discovers a hole in her pocket. She retraces her steps and finds the pocket watch has fallen down a sewer drain. She attempts to retrieve the watch when... After being chastised by her father for losing the watch, the girl again attempts to get it back. Only this time, she comes face to face with the ogre and is captured. So things are looking pretty dire for our little girl here. But the clever girl is able to bargain her release for some pieces of candy. Soon he releases the girl unharmed, and she returns home. She even gets the watch back as well. Perhaps the ogre may not be as bad as he appears. The girl returns the watch, but the father, coming back home completely wasted, is not pleased. He threatens the girl and attempts to attack her, only for the ogre to appear and save the day, nearly killing the girl's father in the process. In the end, the girl makes a choice. She decides she'd rather live her life underground in a sewer with a grotesque, horrific monster than spend another day with her abusive father. As you could probably tell, a lot of these concepts, ideas, and even the work on makeup would eventually evolve and take shape to form what would eventually become Pan's Labyrinth. At the heart of both stories is a girl and her father, our hero and our villain, and the fantasy that separates them. The entire movie, Vidal would treat Ophelia like an unwanted guest in his house. They were complete opposites. Where Ophelia is in touch with her imagination and creativity, Vidal is bound by brutal realism. This is reflected in their scenes in the film. Ophelia's scenes are filled with fantasy, wonder, and warmth, while Vidal's are cruel, cynical, and cold. When Ophelia's mother takes a turn for the worse, the Faun gifts Ophelia with a mandrake root. She places it in a bowl of milk under the mother's bed and feeds it drops of blood every day, and the results seem to speak for themselves. However, when Vidal catches wind of Ophelia's doings, he wasn't having any of it. There is no room in his world of order and death for make-believe nonsense. And this scene is the most these two ever even interact, even after her mother's death. He just raises his son while giving Ophelia even less thought than a houseplant. And it's not just Ophelia. Everyone fears him. None more than Dr. Ferreira and Mercedes, his housemaid. They both secretly help the rebels in the woods, including Mercedes' brother, Pedro. The entire film, they walk on eggshells around Vidal, being careful, but not appearing to be too careful. The doctor, unfortunately, was not careful enough. While treating a captured rebel, Vidal compares the bottle of antibiotics the doctor is currently using to a bottle found at an abandoned rebel camp. They are identical. The doctor was instructed to stabilize the prisoner so his torture could resume, but this is where he draws the line. Looking at this young man, at the damage Vidal had done, it was inhuman. His eyes swollen, even possibly missing, blood pouring from his mouth, hands shattered and split in two, every single finger crushed, one just a bloody stump, and 4 broken ribs. The barbarity was too much, and the young man pleaded for death. And Vidal, while torturing this guy, you may notice something in his face non-existent throughout the rest of the film. Joy. He's toying with him, mocking his stutter, a wolf playing with his food. He revels in torture. On top of everything else, Vidal is a sadist. The doctor, against Vidal's orders, obeyed his heart and put the man out of his misery. That same heart, shortly after, would unfortunately stop beating. Mercedes knew she was next. Throughout the entire novelization, the phrase, "he knows," would persistently repeat over and over for her. You could see the fear that phrase brought across her face in the film. You could see it in her eyes. He knows. Yes, he did. And she would end up like Ferreira, with her face in the mud, though Vidal would probably prefer her to die on her back, like Ophelia's mother, while giving him another son. This line is sickening. Mercedes spent more time around Vidal than even some of his own men. She fetched his meals, made his coffee, tended to him every day. She knew him, and according to her, Vidal was sadistic enough to possibly force himself upon her. She feared he'd use her to have another son. The woman who had given birth to him was beautiful too, but Mercedes was stronger, which meant it would be so much more enjoyable to break her. Much more enjoyable for sure than to torture that stutterer or to shoot that noble idiot of a doctor. And he had a son now, someone to teach what life was about. He would teach him its cruel dance, step by step. The ending of the film is still widely disputed and controversial. Is Ophelia really a fairy tale princess with a birthright to a fantasy kingdom? Or was this all just the coping mechanism for a lonely, desperate little girl with an overactive imagination in an attempt to escape her horrific reality? The answer is up to interpretation. The mandrake root appeared to be working, but it no longer moved as if it was alive when held by the adults. When Mercedes and Ophelia were caught after attempting to escape, Ophelia was locked in her bedroom with an armed guard outside the door. Still, she was able to escape using a magic piece of chalk, which creates doorways. However, when Ophelia attempted to escape again with her brother into the labyrinth to complete her final task, Vidal followed behind her. While she talked to the Faun, Vidal saw no one. He was drugged and drowsy, sure, but it's still unclear. Personally, I don't think it matters either way, whether he is a wolf in men's clothing, or just a man. Evil is evil, and Vidal, for sure, undisputedly, is pure evil. It's fun to play the villain. There's something childlike about it. Primitive. You say to a kid, "We're putting on a play of Little Red Riding Hood. Do you want to play Little Red Riding Hood or the wolf?" Well, it's obvious. The wolf. It's liberating. You can do things you wouldn't normally do, like eat people. It's also playful. The whole aspect of play is very important to me in acting. I don't need to look for the evil within me or get into a dark place where I imagine that I could kill a kid. What I do is imagine that I love killing a kid. Get it? There is no humanity in Vidal. He's unbalanced, sick, a monster. But in no way do I pretend to understand him. I'm playing the part. I'm the wolf. Without a doubt, Captain Ernesto Vidal remains one of, if not the most monstrously evil villains in cinema history. Vile, depraved, and devoid of empathy. Absent of any redeeming qualities. There is nothing to sympathize with here. There are those who may call pure evil, quote unquote, one note. But I disagree. What can be more complex than pure evil? Fairy tale monsters should not deserve sympathy. They exist for a purpose, to teach a lesson or a moral. And so too does the Big Bad Wolf. There is one thing in common about the Big Bad Wolf in every story. The moment had arrived. Vidal felt it as if he'd lived it 1,000 times in his dreams. The moment to prove he was his father's son, and to show his son what a man's life was all about. Whether by water, fire, a farmer, or a woodsman, the wolf always gets what's coming to him. In the end.
Hello there, and thank you for watching the Grimm Glow. This was my very first attempt at a video, and I'm still figuring a few things out, but I truly do appreciate everyone who has made it this far. I have more videos in the works ranging from more deep dives of villains and monsters, to analysis of horror movies in general. I'll also analyze horror movie news and trailer releases that interest me. If you like what you've seen so far, I'd appreciate the support. Goodbye for now, and remember, even when this video dims, the glow, it follows you.